Chlorine News Splash. Good evening and welcome to Chlorine Callaloo. This is our Chlorine News Splash. I am Darren Belfon of Point 14 Aquatics. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube pages of Trimbago Freestyles. The Facebook pages of Movie Lang, Cindian, Boisseau, and the Center of Excellence Pool Complex. Remember to follow us, like the pages, and share the live. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by searching Trimbago Freestyles. In the headlines, Qatar commences ISL short course campaign. Serbia wins FINA World Junior Water Polo Championship. ASATT postpones AGM. And now a Chlorine News Splash. Last Thursday, Dylan Carter started International Swim League, ISL, campaign in Naples, Italy. Swimming with the London Roar franchise. Carter participated in Match 3 of the ISL, which also featured the Energy Standard, Iron, and New York Breakers. The International Swim League is a short course swim competition. Carter earned 5 points for his team with his fourth place finish in 50-meter freestyle in a time at 21.46. The event was won by Ben Proud of Energy Standard. He then teamed up for the 4x100-meter freestyle relay and won silver for the London Roar in an event won by New York Breakers team with a 22.62 clocking in the 50-meter butterfly. Carter won bronze in the event. The two Olympian is expected to be in action again on September 11th and 12th. As the London Roar shows down with the Aqua, Centurions, Cali Condors, and Tokyo Frog Kings. Best wishes to Dylan. Serbia won its third World Junior Water Polo Championship title in a tournament which took place from August 28th to September the 5th. Italy had to settle for silver as it went down 8-10 in the final. Montenegro edged Hungary 12-11 to win the bronze. The Amateur Swimming Association of Trinidad and Tobago, ASATT, has postponed its annual general meeting, which was scheduled for September the 14th at the Cascadia in an email to the council. ASATT states that they received a letter from the Minister of Health, which did not approve approval in the in-person meeting at the Cascadia Hotel. A new date for the AGM has not been set, and the last ASATT AGM was due in November 2019. In Chlorine Callaloo news, up next is our visual eyes chlorine champion, Zahra Gaskin. Zahra Gaskin is a Barbados national triathlete who had participated in ASATT swim meets in our Lifebuoy segment. We chatted with William Carr, who is a Masters open water swimmer who wants the swimmers to get back to the beaches. We round up this episode with our Coaches Connection segment, where Coach Rocky chats with head coach of Blue Dolphins Swim Club, Shawn Pouchet. To speak on the topic, what should be our final priorities for aquatics? Thank you for tuning to Chlorine Callaloo, and remember to like and share this live. Also, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel of Trimbago Freestyles. I am Darren Belfon, and this is your Chlorine News Splash. Stay tuned. Up next, we have Jason Wickham hosting our Virtual Eye Chlorine Championship. Good evening.
Right, good evening, and welcome to Chlorine Callaloo. Welcome to Chlorine Champions. Right here on Trimbago Freestyles, we'd like to thank Darren Belfort for his reading of news. And we'd like to welcome you again to this episode number 17. Last week we had our Independence episode. We weren't live, but we hope you had a good show. So in this segment, we're waiting to see our next guest, which is Zahra Gaskin. Zahra Gaskin is, well, she'll tell you who she is, but she's a triathlete. She trains in Trinidad and Tobago, and she represents the beautiful island of Barbados. Good evening, Zahra.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome and thank you for coming on to Chlorine Champions.
Of course, I'm honored.
All right, so Zahra, tell me a little bit about yourself, like what school you attend, etc.
Well, I'm 17 years old. I currently attend Bishop Anstey Trinity College East Sixth Form.
Sixth form, first year?
Upper six.
Upper six. All right. So let me ask you a question. What do you see as a benefit of being a student athlete?
Well, I have always enjoyed a life of sport, and for me, it has always been quite a natural fit. I noticed through the years that my classmates who were not involved in sports or actually any activity at all, I always wondered what they did with all that free time.
Right.
The main benefits that I have experienced include time management. I have no choice but to structure my days, my weeks, my months, and just stick to it. The discipline that I would have learned at an early age, being a student athlete, has helped me both academically and in sport. In addition, I have had the privilege of traveling to many regional and international countries for, sporting competition, through which I have met, many competitors and now friends. Now I'm about to embark on my university education in just a year, and being a student athlete really opens up an entirely different world of possibilities. And I may rejoin old competitors at new schools, and then when I apply to university, I will naturally fit into a team, like a group of immediate friends in a new environment.
So how did this swimming thing start with you? I understand you had no choice but to get involved in swimming.
Well, I started swimming in early childhood and triathlon for that fact. Both my parents saw triathlon as a developing sport. It's like, okay, well, there aren't many girls in triathlon, so let's, get both me and my sister into this. And I thank them for that every day, because I really enjoy swimming and triathlon and running.
Well, we'll find out a little more about that in a little bit. But how has your preparation been going for Junior Pan Am? Is it that you're qualified? Is it that you're on the team? What's the status?
Well, it has been challenging given the pandemic and the social restrictions. Triathlon is a multi-sport sport, and so to prepare for the games, I need to quickly swim, ride, and run, which has proven to be difficult in this time, given that no beaches, no pools have been open for us. So I actually traveled to Barbados 2 weeks ago so I could get a little swimming in, properly.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
So if you didn't know, and we're now joining, this is the Visualize Chlorine Champions segment. We have Zahra Gaskin. Her mom is Trini, and dad is Bajan. I got that right?
Yes.
So let me ask you a question. Are you a Trini Bajan or a Bajan Trini?
Well, I was actually born in Ireland, so I'll have to.
Oh my gosh, this complicates things a bit.
A global citizen.
You're a global citizen, but you're not gonna get away. You're not gonna get away though, because I know you lived in Barbados, you lived in Trinidad, so I'm trying to cause a little regional uproar here, right? So you have to help me a little bit. So, which accent is better, Trini or Bajan?
Well, to be honest, when I first came, I was in Form 2 at Bishop's. I could not understand a thing that any Trinidadian was saying for the first 2 months. I was like, excuse me, what did you say? But now that I've traveled back to Barbados after having lived here for a couple of years, I can't understand what the Bajans are saying too. So I cannot say which one is better.
No, yeah, you have to choose one, man. This is supposed to be a quick one answer. We're not going to put you out of Trinidad, and Barbados is not going to deport you. Which
I'll
one?
say Tobago accent.
That was a very good answer, actually. Very good answer. Beaches.
Barbados beaches take win.
I agree. Food.
I mean, too, so that's a little plus.
And the food, which one?
Well, in terms of food,
Barbados or Trinidad and Tobago, which one? Quick.
Trinidad food. Bacon.
Bacon shack. Don't worry, we're going to talk about the beaches just now. We'll talk about some bacon shack. And
Okay.
Soca, which one?
I like St. Lucian Soca, so I'll have to say that.
Are you going to study law?
No, I'm not going to study law.
Yeah,
I'm going to go to burial science.
You gave a very diplomatic kind of lawyer answer there, right? So that's what I was wondering. And
Yeah.
swim, bike, run. Choose one.
Run. I choose the run.
All right.
Especially, I like track running. 3,000 and 1,500.
So, all right. So I know I saw your mom put up a stat before that, that you all got vaccinated, etc. Why did you see it as important to get vaccinated?
Well, in terms of being vaccinated, especially as adolescents and Generation Z, we all have our play in the global responsibility against, the COVID-19 pandemic and immunization work. And for me as an athlete who will have to travel to compete and likely for school as well, the best protection that I can give myself is vaccination. And I see it as an investment to my future.
Good answer. And let me ask you a final question after I get you in trouble with Barbados. What advice would you give to athletes who cannot train at this time?
My advice is that there are always forms of training that can be done. For swimmers, I appreciate that unless you have a pool in your backyard, you cannot swim, because swimming is really one of those sports that is just so unforgiving. There's 2 sessions of training and all of it, you feel like you're going to drown. But during the time, you can, use it to maintain strength through stretched cords, cardiovascular work, and through burpees or skipping, and then the CyberFit. That's a Barbadian gym online, Zoom for free. If you want, you could, message me and I can link you up with that. And they have HIIT workouts or focus on core and balance power. There are so many domains of fitness that can be maintained during this time.
All right, Zahra, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on to the Visualize Chlorine Champions. Thank you for repping Barbados and the red, white, and black. And I wish you all success in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Right, so that was Zahra Gaskin, and this was Visualize Chlorine Champions. Remember to check them out at their 3 locations in Kirab, Trinity, and Chaguanas. Right, so welcome back to the segment we call the Lifebuoy, saving aquatics one guest at a time. And our guest this evening is Mr. William Carr, a Masters Open Water Swimmer. Good evening, Mr. Carr.
Hey, Jason, how are you? How are everybody?
I'm good. How are you keeping?
I'm fine.
Welcome to Chlorine Callaloo. Where have you been?
Been working.
Right, and that's a blessing these days, because some of us can't even say that.
Yes,
So
it is.
So Mr. Carr is an open water swimmer. He told me he got into competitive swimming as an adult, basically, but not necessarily in the pool. Am I right?
You're very right. I started open water swimming at a late age. Almost 26 years old was my first open water event. You know, I used to swim teenage years, but not never competitive. You know,
What happened? You're afraid chlorine or?
afraid heights, afraid diving off of diving boards.
Heights, but I understand you're about 12 feet 7.
Maybe that's the reason there.
That's the reason. So, but what is it about open water for you as opposed to the pool swimming?
I think with open water is just the natural draw to the ocean. That freedom to go any direction. The camaraderie I have with different open water swimmers as well. Open water brings a total different element of swimming. You know, it's very varying conditions. You can have a brilliant smooth day with flat conditions, and you go in the evening and it's 3-foot swells going over your head, right? In the same location. So there is always some different challenge in open water swimming. I mean, you have to swim in a pool because you live on a beach. You have to swim in a pool somehow to make up some time and distance. But there's nothing that exhilarating as open water swimming, in my opinion.
All right. So, I mean, part of the reason that we have it here is because I was glancing through my Facebook a few days ago, and I saw interesting posts, which I will put up on screen and share. And this is Mr. William Carr, who is calling to open our beaches and said I'm an open water long distance swimmer. And September 11, 2021 would have been my first attempt to swim from Scarborough to Trinidad. Training had begun 1 year in advance. And when beaches closed in March, we were halfway there with our training targets. Mr. PM, it's time you open our beaches. Not everyone uses them to drink and lime. I fly our TNT flag proudly in any open water event I partake in. It's time you put in place a plan to open the beaches, just as many Caribbean islands have done gradually, restricting hours of use. So Mr. Carr, you get any hate mail after this?
No, actually, I've gotten a lot of friend requests. You know, I normally don't have much activity on Facebook, but a lot of support, a lot of support, and it is encouraging. It is encouraging from even different aspects other than swimming. You know, you have support from guys who do windsurfing, from guys who do surfing, from guys who do paddleboarding. So just people who go to the beach to sit down and feel the breeze, right? To feel the sand between the toes, right? It's something about living on an island that we take for granted, right? And it is something that, yes, I understand the importance of closing beaches, but I also understand the importance of getting the athletes and recreational users of the beach back on that beach, all right? Monitored, you know, in some strange way, policing, right? But allowing that access to the beach, right? I think what we're doing, we're creating almost a pressure cooker situation, right? Where we're enclosing the population into something that may explode, you know.
But I mean, what you say, I mean, I've been devil's advocate because, you know, one of the things that was said in previous things is that, you know, the beaches will, or the congregation of beaches were responsible. So, I mean, if you are the Prime Minister now, I mean, what would you put in place to, you know, limit those things? How am I going to separate, the questions are going to be asked, how am I going to separate a serious swimmer from somebody who come in to make it bad for people like you?
Yeah, I mean, one simple way to separate would be just restrict hours. All right, you're not going to have a lineman come into the beach at 6 in the morning and looking to leave by 10, 11 o'clock in the day. All right, that would restrict definitely the amount of numbers of people who would visit the beach. Another way to do it is restrict beaches. Right, say one week this is the beach that's going to be open, and we man that beach, and at 11 o'clock the policing forces come out and just make sure no one's on the beach. The same fines that are in place currently, they just enforce the fines and it will work, right? But totally restricting the use of the beach, especially for a citizenry that has reached just today 500 and something thousand vaccinated people. You have a citizenry that is supporting, right, this drive to be vaccinated, to get on with life, all right? And you're squeezing a bit too much, right? The beaches are something that gives people that form of relaxation. It gives that people the form of de-stressing, all right? To me, open water swimming is actually a form of meditation, all right? Where you go into an element where you block everything out, right? All your stresses pretty much disappear, all right? And it's your breathing, and the elements.
I mean, I know different masters have gotten, some masters have gotten different approvals, etc. But to train. But how is that pool swim for you compared to that beach swim, right?
I mean, I did get approval to swim in a pool, and I'm limited of 40 minutes 3 times a week. 40 minutes is usually a warm up in an open water swim. All right. So you do. I am limited on time, but I have to say I am swimming and thankfully for that. And but it's no comparison. Is swimming in a pool and flipping and doing laps is no comparison into getting into a rhythm that you know in control of every aspect of your stroke, of your direction, of what you where and what you want to where you want to go. There's really no comparison. You know, you have to swim in a pool because you need to put in the distance. But left up to me, I would find a beach to swim every day if I could.
What do you have to say to those young athletes though now, who there are a lot of young national prospective athletes who are still out in the water? What would you like to see for them?
Yeah, I would like to just tell them don't lose focus. All right, a lot of them may feel that the opportunity for a scholarship or opportunity to be at the pinnacle in swimming, they have missed it because of COVID. Use COVID to create a positive out of it. All right. Just as we did when the group of us had the idea that we wanted to swim from Tobago to Trinidad. All right. We utilized that period where we knew if we got the distances in and we could make it. All right. Once conditions were suitable, we could have made it. And you used that situation where we had beaches open 1 week, beaches closed 1 month, pools open, pools closed. But we were able to get in significant training to get a distance where we were just short of swimming 25 kilometers continuously. And that was because of COVID, right? Because all borders were locked. We couldn't go anywhere. And we said, okay, we have a beautiful island of Tobago and we love to swim along the North Coast, right? Let's make it happen this year. And I think if we had just gotten approval earlier, or we could have probably still had that swim on Saturday, But situation is as it is, and there will be another year, and we will start all over again, and get to that target.
But y'all, I mean, I always say it already. I mean, I know a lot of people have attempted it, but I don't think anyone has successfully done the Tobago to Trinidad journey as yet.
No, not as yet. It is not an easy swim. There's a lot of factors that go into that swim. We have a strong Guyana run current that will pull us about 7 knots head into Grenada. The key to that swim is really mental training, more than physical training. All right, you need to know mentally. You can put your head down for 13 to 15 hours, stopping intermittently every 2 hours. All right, and at some points not even see land. You're just going to be guided by your support vessels. All right, you're going to be guided by co-swimmers, right, who will jump in and kind of guide you along, swim alongside. But it is a swim that is very, very doable. All right, and with the right planning and the right time, and definitely the right training.
And well, you need to train in the sea. That will help.
Yes, for sure.
Um, well, I mean, a bigger question. I mean, what do you think? Do you think the access to sports in general reflects a cultural problem in Trinidad and Tobago at
Oh
this
yeah.
time? I mean, I will talk. I feel sometimes sports is like a punishment. You know, parents, if you do bad in school, take away sports. If you do this, take away sports. And right now, that's how I feel. Right.
But
So
if you look at what's going on right now, we've actually continued that cycle, right? Where from a young age, if your kid is in bad, you put them in a corner, or you go to a detention after school, or you said stay away, or in a sense you put away, all right, and restriction of movements, so to speak. And yes, we are in a pandemic, and yes, we need to be wary of where and what we do, but it's not the right way. We need a little more. We need a little more communication between both parties. We need a little more consultation. And if you look at it in sports wise, we've taken away from the youth, right, that ability to be youth, right? And we put them in front of a computer screen, we put them inside a bedroom, and restrict them in their homes. We're gonna have a lot of problems with youth wanting to get back into sport afterwards, right? They're gonna have to start over, you know. And as Zahra said in her message before, you know, 2 weeks out of the pool, you feel like you learn to swim all over again. And a lot of these kids have been out of the pool, in and out of the pool, for over a year, right? They're gonna have to learn to swim again, all right? A lot of them doing dry land, right? Yes, we have some elite athletes who have exemptions and been training, but there's a handful of athletes, right? This is not the true reflection of where swimming is and the amount of swimmers that we have in different clubs, even in open water. All right, it's not a true reflection of the true contingent of swimmers. You know.
and I would sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say too, athletes too are more disciplined than the average human, right? And you know, if you put them at these facilities, etc., during this time, they want to go and they want to train. And I mean, the whole environment of the beaches and the pools. I mean, if it is managed properly by the different institutions, we can get it done because we did it before the first lockdown. So,
we learned during that first lockdown what worked and what didn't work. Right. And we could improve on different aspects of how we use a pool and how we go to the beach. But in general, I think we've gone wrong the wrong approach. We go into, okay, our punishment is to be locked down, right? And in general society, it's the same thing. You get locked away for every single thing you do, right? Whereas we need to have that communication between understanding, and you will get the support. Right? Once you give that clear understanding, okay, when we reach a certain target of vaccinated persons, this is what we're going to open. Right now, we wait for Saturday. We wait for a Saturday 2:00 meeting, and we all hope that okay, this is the weekend, and we're going to hear that we can go back and swim in the ocean. And it's just probably not going to happen. And the kids feel it just as well, right? We as adults, we have access. We could communicate a little easier. They wait for the parents' intervention and say, okay, well, no, pool's still closed to you guys. All right. Picture the frustration that they feel.
Let me just dive a little bit. You're a masters athlete, right? What would you like to see for masters swimming in Trinidad and Tobago?
Oh man, I have so much hope for masters swimming. I think Trinidad and Tobago is probably one of the most scenic places to in open water to swim. All right, the North Coast is probably the most picturesque of coast I've ever swam at. All right, and that's regarding open water. Regarding general swimming in pools, I would like to see the masters have a friendly swim meet every now and again. You know, drink some beers at the end of it, make some new friends. You know, have a little bragging rights on your shoulder, and get everyone together. It doesn't necessarily have to be a team. We could be red and blue or whatever color that you want to swim under. It doesn't necessarily have to be even in a pool. We could find a nice place like Williams Bay in Chaguanas and do some lengths there. All right. But masters swimmers have a lot of experience in Trinidad. They have a lot of good swimmers who continued swimming and could give youth a lot of valued information, value techniques, and help them, guide them, right? Get new people into swimming, people who've never thought that they could have swam. I think a lot of masters would really, go and assist, in just giving tips or getting youth into the pool.
I saw somebody actually just put, this is Jackie Beckford Enriquez. This is from Jamaica. But I came on some masters meet in Trinidad back in the 80s. So, I mean, obviously there were things in the past and we could see how we could get it going again in the future. And
yeah,
final words to you, Mr. Carr. So your final plug for the pools and the beaches. Are sticking in pools there too?
Well, I think it needs to be done. We have all the kids are being frustrated more than anyone else. They have masters who have exemptions for training in different international events. What about the kids? The kids need that access back into the pool as well. And we have schools that sit in idle 8 hours a day. All right. Most classes are online. Kids can move with their phone and sit down and do their class inside a pool room, right? And get some swimming done. It needs to be done somehow.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Carr, for coming in, and thank you for tuning in as well.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
You too. So that was Mr. William Carr, right? Isn't he? Hold a second. Right. That's Mr. William Carr. Up next, we have our Coaches Connection segment. That's it for me for tonight. So up next, it's Coaches Connection, where we have Coach Rocky, and he'll be interviewing Shawn Pouchet. Have a good night.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Coaches Connection. Right, this evening we'll be interviewing Coach Shawn. I don't see him call you Shawn. You put respect on the name Shawn, Coach Shawn.
Hey.
Right? But this evening, I've spoken with your dad before on the program, but I've never had the pleasure of having you on here. So welcome to Coaches Connection.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks.
Nice. So Shawn is the head coach of the Dolphins. He has been head coach of Carifta teams, multiple teams in the past. And today we want to just discuss, in the last segment, Jason and Mr. Carr, they spoke about different things. And we're more here to talk about the youth aquatics, so to speak. Right? When I say aquatics, it's not just solely swimming, it's across the board. Right? And where we are now, right? We want to look at governance and just finding, in different previous weeks, we have spoken about just finding frameworks for moving forward, right? What's your views on just swimming in general, where it is now, and what we have in place for duplication?
In terms of duplication, I wouldn't really say that there is much in terms of duplication at the technical level. We have a lot of clubs doing the same thing, but in different, at the same level, but doing different. They're not really addressing the different aspects of the sport with respect from learn to swim come all the way up. And I think what is sorely lacking is really a system in place, a national system, where we could get the throughput that we really need for the sport to blossom. The sport, we're talking about aquatics. When I look at the meets and I look at the data in terms of the amount of persons participating, and then when you look at the water polo scenario, we have 2 clubs. I know synchro hasn't really taken off. Diving, we would have had a representation in CCCAN in 20 when it was held here, but we already have no local programs running in with respect to diving. So I wouldn't say that we haven't really diversified the way that we need to, and we haven't covered the full spectrum of what aquatics really means. So from a governance standpoint, I would say that we are not really maximizing our output, and what we could do, given the resources we have. I think it's already a time for us to take check. I mean, COVID was a perfect opportunity. Let's take check of what you have in terms of personnel, what you have in terms of physical resources, what you have in terms of program structures, frameworks, and you need to get a starting point in terms of how it is you're going to move forward. From the governance standpoint, ASATT, there's a lot that needs to be changed. And it's not only from the aquatic standpoint. I think a lot of the NSOs have come to realization, and it took probably a hit in the Olympics for us to realize that we need to make some adjustments to what we're doing. All right, but having the experience of being in this sport as a swimmer since the early age of 4 or 5, and coming into it as a coach and administrator as well, it really leads you to understand that not much has changed, and that is not a good thing. All right, and it reflects very, very evidently when we swim or we compete internationally. I think it's a regional issue, not really a Trinidad and Tobago issue, but we speaking here of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. The ASATT has definite need for change in terms of the constitution and the legislative frameworks. Also, in terms of the makeup of how we run the organization, it has to be more professional. It has to be a full-time entity. It cannot be run by volunteerism if we are to achieve on the level that we want to achieve, if we want to achieve on the world level, that is. And we have done some good things, and we have to recognize that. And I think it will take a full 360 review, to see how do we view swimming, how do we view aquatics, how do we view water polo, diving, all these sports, and how does the public view this in the country? How does corporate Trinidad and Tobago view our aquatics? Understand how does our neighboring associations and the first world developed nations, US and Canada, even the UK or wherever we want to look at, how do they view aquatics in Trinidad and Tobago? And from there, I think once we get an idea of where we're at, we need to know where we're going from a vision perspective, where we want to be. But we have to recognize, we must. I think it's always good to recognize that, yes, there's need for change, but you must recognize what good has been done. And I think we must give kudos for some of the financial address that was given over the last couple of years with respect to some debt repayment. And we have we have been going away from the reliance on the government for sustenance, So I think that we have recognized that is one thing that needs to change. But from the technical perspective, from a coaching perspective, there's much to be done in terms of policies and frameworks to really guide us in the coming years. And it's not a 1 year thing. It's not a 6 months. We should have been, and I think it's something we could do in the future, and we need to do going forward, is to already plan within the Olympic cycles if we are to already be taking our aquatic sports seriously. All right, so we plan in accordance with the Olympic cycles, which is a 4-year cycle.
Nice. So you spoke about a couple of things there. You spoke about constitution, you spoke about policies, frameworks. I mean, I know, and I like what you said, where we often don't give respect where respect is due, right? So there are positives. It's not like there's nothing been going on with the swimming body, right? But if you were in the position, so Jason asked Mr. Carr just now, if you're the Prime Minister, what you would do? If you were on the board and in a position to make change in swimming in the country, where would you first start? Where would Shawn first say, hey, you know what? I think this is the biggest cancer we have, or this is the biggest...
Definitely, we have to start at the bottom, because we don't have the type of participation that it comes like, when you have 20 or 30 athletes and you have 10 clubs, it's going to be a rat race from day one. You understand? And I think that you would find all sorts of techniques that are not advisable being employed, and it is to the detriment of the national perspective of getting the best out of our citizenry, our talent pool. And what we need to do is really find a way to maximize this. And I think that there are so many programs that are being run in isolation or in silos, and we really need to take. I think ASATT doesn't really play an instrumental role when it comes to the learn to swim level. We really look at it from the competitive level as it stands right now, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I think you need to start covering it from the very beginning, and have a greater understanding, if not necessarily control, but you want to have some guidelines and an understanding of what your base exists, what base exists for you. This would augur well for all aquatic sports. Once you have those programs up and running, and you have a plethora of community pools that the government has blessed us with. We have the Aquatic Center, we have private pools, we have over 100 primary schools, we have a lot of secondary schools. I mean, those meets, as I know for myself, because I run the primary school meet, and the secondary school meet, as I observe, they go all day. And there are a lot of swimmers. There are a lot of people who can swim. And that's still touching the, that's not even getting deep into it. We haven't really run programs at the school level. So those are some of the things that I think that we need to address. And from a NSO perspective, you have to put, from the Ministry of Education, I don't think that they would make it a priority. You have to bring the priority to them. And that would require you putting a plan in place and really working out the structure of how this program will work from a national level from primary school come up.
And I suppose, well, we always talk about foundation in the Coaches Connection. So I suppose it would start with a new constitution, or amending, so to speak, the constitution that is in place. Because, it is restrictive, so to speak, right, in certain regards. And as you said, I didn't mention initially that a previous national swimmer as well. As you said, when you were swimming, the same laws applied in certain aspects, the same methods applied in certain aspects, and we have seen the world over has changed.
Yeah. Right? Well, I must note that there was an attempt to address that constitution. A lot of the issue is that one of the things that needs to be addressed is to make decisions. How are decisions made? And that is a big hindrance right now in the aquatic fraternity. There's oftentimes a lot of clubs that are registered but not really active, and because they are on the official listing, and according to the constitution, the quorum is seldom met. So a lot of times decisions can't be made, and this is not something that should be hindering progress in 2021. Yes, we need to have rules and regulations, but I think that it needs to go across the board, and it needs to be enforced fully with respect to clubs that are actually in this and persons who are going to give their best effort for the national good of the aquatics.
As you mentioned when we just started, right? You spoke about using this COVID time, right? And I see it as a perfect springboard, right? Where, hey, you know what? There has to have a flex go in the opposite direction of where you want to go for you to get a propulsion forward, right? And I think now is the perfect time where, hey, you know what? You say we started to learn to swim and we get back to basics, right? But I look at something such as national team selection, right? Right? We watch the national teams. You get picked on a national team, you have 2-3 weeks, a month, right? Where you're all training together, right? Some teams 2-3 times a week. What do you think? What was your views on that? Do you think that is sufficient? Do you think?
Well, I have plenty of views when it comes to national teams, but I would say that the whole, when you look at overall what it is we are doing and what it is we have done over the time. All right, let me go back. When I swam, I remember the Caribbean and Central American games would have 10 and unders at the highest level, and after a time they discontinued that, and we would wonder why. And what you would notice is that a lot of the swimmers were not making it past in the 14, in the 12, in the 14 there. And then full circle, a little later in my swimming career started. I saw the emergence of the Goodwill Swimming Championships, where we had swimmers from 8 and under. Yeah. So it come like we went the other direction. You understand? So I think what we need to really, again, it's part of the 360 review. What it is we're really doing? Is it something that is not that we want to be following the rest of the world or the leading developed countries, but definitely we must recognize if they are doing certain things and we are not doing it, or if we are doing certain things and they are not doing it, that especially given the level of success that they are having at the senior level, which is really ultimately what we would want for the as any NSO would want performance at the senior level. Yes, we would want the age group progression and development of athletes and so on, and we understand that everybody's going to be an Olympian, but with respect to national teams, definitely the policies have to be relooked in terms of is it really, I don't know, is it really that we focus heavily on national team selection and we really forego some of the fundamentals that you speak about, and it really shortens the career of the swimmers and shortens the lifespan of how much they could do this type of work that they're doing to earn that national team selection. And as I said, it's a real circular issue because it comes back to you have limited resources, and if it is you're not doing it, I'll go by somebody else who's doing it, and there's not a national understanding of how it is we're going to approach this, and it's just going to end up bad because I mean over the last decade or two in swimming, you know, I could speak from swimming. I know water polo has had its ups and downs as well. Definitely, we have had some hints of progression, and then we have had a period of regression, and it's due to sometimes the limited talent that you have, or the amount of swimmers that you have exposed, and if it is you're going to be able to really get the best out of the athletes. And I think if we look at the country's performance at the regional championships, we have fallen off a bit, but you know, it is more concerning that we are falling off at the higher age groups than more so than in general. And I think that is definitely something we need to address, is that our strongest performers should be at the older age groups leading into senior swimming, and not necessarily by a bunch of 11 to 12s, or even in the case of the Goodwill where we have these standout 8 and 9 to 10s. I don't think that they should. First of all, I don't even think that want to look at having that level of competition for that. I mean, if we look at the US and other countries, they definitely don't have that type of high pressure focus on competition and competing for gold medals at the age of 8 and 9 and 10. I think it really, yes, it speaks to your competitive spirit, but it could also do a lot of damage. So we have to do an assessment to see whether it weighs well on what we want to achieve from a long-term perspective.
And I mean, I've asked persons this in the past, being a head coach in your club, right? You mentioned something about us. What you just said there is basically we have to change the culture. The hardest thing to do in people is change what they think they know, basically. So most parents already think that if my child is not winning in 10 and under, right, they're not going to be anything in the future, right? So they want a coach who will be a drill sergeant, who will focus on all the wrong things, right, and press their child to swim more time than they should, right? How would you now, in trying to change this culture, how would you get the parents on board with that?
Well, I think while there is a lot of information available online, that's a good and a bad thing. You know, so the internet is powerful because you could find any information to meet whatever justification you need in your mind.
Yeah.
All right. We see this happening with the vaccines and anti-vaxxers, and everybody has their opinions and their rights to believe what they want to believe, and you could find a piece of information with any opinion that you want. All right. But I think that once the technical team of the association is in agreement on a national policy or national framework or a system by which we're going to operate, those type of persons that you speak of will be in the minority. And I think that, it almost sounds like, they are the better option, or that is the better option. And the reality is, depending on the circumstances, it's not necessarily going to be that way. Once the systems are running well, and it will take a little time for it to get up and running. And I think, as you said, change and the person's affinity to change, it takes a little while for persons to buy in.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's why I think we start from the bottom, because I'm not going to say that the persons that are currently in the association and are currently in the system are a lost cause, but definitely the change has to start from the bottom and come up. And while I think we will experience most of the resistance to change from the persons currently in the system, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we are in this for the long haul, and we are for the sports of aquatics, and we want the best for aquatics over a long haul period. So yes, we get pretty attached because we have a low number of athletes in each club is pretty much, and I'm sure this COVID period would have affected club membership. I know it definitely has in my club, and our ability to run the Learn to Swim programs and so on. So it has been a struggle, and it's going to be a bit of a tough period over the next year or two, because everybody looking to get some edge, and I don't know how it is going to be, how it's going to roll out, but I think the focus definitely has to be on making that change. Of course, we're going to try to implement the change, but I know you must be realistic to know that you will get the resistance from the persons, as you said, who would have been, if you want to call it, the veteran age groupers, or the veteran age group parents. They're in this thing really long, meaning a couple of years. So you can't really talk too much change on them, because this is how they feel it should be. And, it will take some time, but at least having positions such as mine from my club perspective, I'm able to implement that change from the bottom come up. And yes, I know that they will have some persons who may bicker quietly because they already talked to me about it too much. Yeah. But I know that people are not all on board, but I'm really convinced that what I'm doing is for the betterment of the sports of aquatics, and that we are going to make a long-term impact on the sport in the country. So that's why I've taken the decision to make some hard decisions and make some drastic changes from what we have been doing previously.
Yeah, because some people will prefer to spend $100 every month versus spend $500 a year, because they're afraid of that feeling like out of pocket $500. And I liken it to learning and improving your progress now. They feel like, all right, if I'm 10 years old, 12 years old, male, I should be clocking close to a minute, getting under a minute in 100 freestyle, right? Screw technique. However you reach there, power is power, right? And not realizing that the worse your technique is, there's a point where that drag is stronger than the power, the propulsion you have now.
Yeah, and right? It comes back to why I think they want to do that minute, because their focus is on making a team, or their focus is on breaking a record, and the focus is not at the club or the national level to perfect the technique first before we try to do those things. And they're not given that opportunity. And you can't blame the parents. You can't blame, because they have been thrown into a system, I should say, where although people may be telling them, yeah, you have to work technique, but in practicality, persons don't really emphasize that. Sorry. You see, the emphasis is definitely on, and it goes without showing. Goodwill Trials is one of the most sought after meets in the swim calendar. If you think about it, other than the other national meets, is one of the most revered meets. When you have the Carifta trials and you have the national team selection, you see all these parents and observers in the council meeting to pick a team. You can't get quorum any other time. But it just shows that the emphasis is there, and changing that emphasis and evidence of that change is not there, then you're really not going to be able to convince anybody that you're doing anything differently. All right. So there's a clear need for addressing the way that we focus our priorities in terms of national teams, and this is at the age group level. You understand? So it makes it difficult. It makes it very difficult to implement a change if you have the same system running parallel.
For sure. I mean, for persons who have tuned in late, I mean, I just want to welcome you all and just remind you all this is Coaches Connection, you're all viewing. And tonight we're just discussing generally swimming in Trinidad, well, aquatics in Trinidad and Tobago, and trying to get that progress from the ground up. And I mean, Shawn, we discussed the national team, like national squads. And two of the reasons I really like that idea is because I believe birds of a feather flock together. If you have 5 close friends and all of them buy, like, let's say blue shoes, I'm just using a random example, right? 4 of them buy blue shoes, right? 5 of them, how many of your friends I said? You will be inclined to buy a blue shoes because at the end of the day, that is your team, that is your crew, all they're rocking together, right? And I like the idea of national teams because it makes technique and the right foundation or the right framework seem like the cool thing. All your friends doing it, you feel like, hey, you know what? I like this, right? And I watch, especially like older persons. As you get older, a lot of things pulling you away from swimming and sport in general, right? When you have this national team structure, you have persons around your age that you could talk to and relate to. A lot of these clubs, they have 15 to 17s training, as you mentioned earlier, around 11 to 12s, right? Persons, 1, who not their speed, 2, they can't relate to. So I remember, like, when I used to swim, I was in a club with 1 other person, sometimes 2 other persons, and that drove me away from the sport quickly because you have to have a real strong mental capacity to do it on your own, right? And I think having like-minded persons. Go ahead.
Well, I just say, I mean, you're addressing one part of it, which is the training part of it, but definitely, I think it's a whole program needs to be developed, and you can't call a national team. You can't call yourself a national team and let's go and train together, and then go back to wherever. I mean, you need a program. A program covers a lot of aspects of being what it means to be a national team member, in terms of your nutritional needs, your understanding of rest and recovery, your general management of time, and making sure that you as a young student athlete, you're handling your responsibilities on both ends. That goes hand in hand with what you do, as you say, birds of a feather flocking together. We really need to make sure that we have birds of a feather on all aspects, because I mean, when you come together to just train at a 1 session or 2 sessions or whatever it be, you're not going to really be able to differentiate it. All right. Yeah. But you're definitely going to have an idea of what it is you want. If you have an idea of what it is you want and what you want a national team to be and what a national team really means. And this is why I think it's beyond the age groups of 8 and 9 to 10, and even to some extent 11 to 12. Because I don't think that they could fathom what being a national team member really means. You understand? So, meaning that they may be fast, and they may be fast in inverted commas, but they're not really understanding of what it takes to be a national team member, right? And yes, we have a lot of infighting that also doesn't really help the situation. So. Yeah. And that may be, and the sad part about it is that it's more at the coaching level or the administration or club level. So you would have infighting within a club, amongst clubs, you understand? And as I told you, having that small group to work with in the first place, you would find that the focus changes very much from what can we do as a country to how can I get an edge on this one, how can I get an edge on that one, and you lose your focus very quickly when you don't have a program structure, right? And that's why I think that a national team needs to have that full coverage to understand that, okay, you're part of the national training team. Whether you make it to selection, that's another issue. You will have trials for that. But you have met the minimum requirement with respect to nutrition, understanding of nutrition and rest and recovery and focus on technique and all these other things that really make up a young athlete that will have a good foundation for attaining their best in the sport.
Nice. You mentioned earlier, you spoke about let's talk about like a technical team, right?
Yeah.
We don't often discuss officials, right? How do you see, I mean, we want to get technical framework in, we want to have a standard. How do you see the officiating and our officials? I mean, we have a lot of volunteerism in swimming, right?
Yeah.
How do you see this having to change, or do you think it's adequate at the moment?
And you're talking about meet officials, or you're talking about technical as in
like meet officials, more like meet officials?
I think that I think volunteerism is kind of the way that it is done throughout the developed nations as well too. It tends to be persons who are close to the sport or have a strong inclination to the sport, be it from their children's involvement or their past involvement as a swimmer as well, or as a athlete in their specific sport. Yes, volunteerism is something that I think is definitely needed. What we need to do is to support them in getting them to the highest standard in terms of training opportunities and also officiating opportunities at regional, international games. All right, and to really have a merit-based system where you could get persons exposed to those levels of competition and have that information sharing amongst the group. I think that we have quite a few officials. Like I think you have more officials than we have people in the crowd. So it's a good thing to see that we have that level of volunteerism, and we would always hope that it is they're doing it in the best interest of the sport, and that I think this is something that needs to be continued, and that the support needs to be done. The support needs to be given at the association level. All right, as I said, training opportunities and opportunities to serve at regional and international competitions, of course, on a merit-based system.
Shawn, I long for the day that the discussions we have in here could see some fruition. Where, I mean, you mentioned earlier the ministry pools, the community pools.
Yeah.
These are greatly underutilized. It have clubs who trying to squeeze a space. Some clubs have to train 7 to 9, 6 to 8, right? Later than they ideally would like, because it's a squeeze at the pool they at. I mean, it's not a savannah where you can just find one and go, right? Yeah. We have a lot of issues that we have to try and reverse the time on. You mentioned earlier that you don't want to follow everybody. I personally have no problem with sifting through and taking wholly what I like from them, right? And implementing it in our structure. I mean, we have seen... Yeah,
I agree. And I'm not saying that we're not going to follow at all, but yeah. I mean, I think that we have enough young, strong, and intelligent minds to come up with something specific to our circumstance, our situation. Definitely, we would, as you say, sift and look, but I wouldn't take it wholesale, yeah. Because you have to recognize your environment. You have to recognize your space, and I think that you would always have to tweak for our environment. Yeah.
I think the hardest question of the night I'm going to pose to you now. We spoke about culture change for the athletes, culture change, administratively, what we need to do. So I just use an example. We decide we're getting this national team on board, right? There are quite a few coaches, right, at the competitive level. How then do you determine who is, because I mean, you've been in little meetings where you've seen coaches want to bragging rights and pride gets in the way. How then do you deal with this where, I mean, everybody have to know their role, eh? Like in the States, you would see coaches who they know a lot and forced to stay.
I think the first way that we deal with it is firstly ensuring that everybody who is in the room is at a at the level. You know, it's kind of funny in sports in the country. You know, how a coach is viewed is not always. Sometimes it gets blurry. All right, because you have persons who would have just started coaching,
Yeah.
no background, no real research or training or anything, and then you would have persons who would have gone through the training and the necessary qualification and so on. And I know at some time in the past we were trying to get a standard in place, and that is something I think also that needs to be addressed in terms of we have to not necessarily adopt the ASCA or the International Coaches Association levels and so on, but we could look at developing a system for ourselves. All right, a level one coach, a level two coach, a level 3 coach, based on certain criteria that we would determine. And of course, we look, as I said, sift and find the alignment of what it is that exists internationally. But clearly, there must be some way of determining the coaches that are in the same pool, and then it makes the decision making a little bit easier. Again, you would have to go back to looking at the athletes that would be placed on the team, and that would form part of the criteria as well too. And once you really think through the criteria of what it is you want, in terms of that person or those persons that are going to serve on the national team or from a national perspective, I think that it'll be quite clear once you have those guidelines and those parameters, so that you could pick or select based on certain groupings.
Shawn, you're speaking like a man who has thought about this and wanted to get involved. Because I mean, as a head coach of Blue Dolphins, right, and not dampening your credentials, but there's only so much you could do, right? Have you ever thought about being part of the administration? I mean, we speak about what the administration in swimming and aquatics in Trinidad and Tobago does. Have you ever thought about being part of that administration? I know the non-annual general meeting, they spoke about it. It's coming up soon. I mean, I know it was postponed, but
yeah.
Have you thought about going and trying to?
Yes, definitely. I've given it a lot of thought. This COVID period is the most amount of time I've ever had, because I've been
Touché.
Prior to that, I've been coaching mornings and evenings and
work in between,
and then doing the administrative and managerial works. And it's been a lot, and trying to have a life as well. But yeah, I think given this period, I was able to put a lot of things in place from the club's perspective, and I have, as you said, there's only so much that could be done at the club level. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And I think that I'm at a point where there's a lot that I think that I could offer to the country in the sport and in aquatics in general. I think that there's not much holding me back at this point. And I think that I'm going to give it a shot. I think that I'm going to put myself forward. And I'm looking towards the first vice president position. So that would be where I think that I'll be able to have the greatest impact with respect to developing the technical aspects of the sport, and to make sure that we get at least a nice foundation, something that I think has been sorely missing. And once we already work together, which will be the biggest challenge. And I'm not being naive. I've been in this thing pretty long, so I know it's going to be challenging. And of course that played on my mind in the past. But at this point in time, I don't really think I have anything to lose. I think that I have more to offer than I have to lose. So I'm going to give it a shot.
Sure, nothing good comes easy, and even if you make 20% of what you want to achieve, you're still 20% closer to 100%. So, I mean, all the best. We don't know when the election will. I didn't see any emails. I don't know if they have carded a date, All the best with that. And thank you so much, Shawn, for your input, your knowledge, shedding some light on this with us, and your concern and your general appreciation and desire for aquatics in Trinidad and Tobago to improve. And they have come from a line of Pouchet who have been involved in the sport and a building block in Swimming Foundation. So thank you again to yourself and your family. Thank you for everyone who tuned in to Coaches Connection tonight. I don't think anybody coming on after me, so I'll close the show. Pleasant evening.